Thank you, Mrs. Acting Chair. So this tabled document will be available as it's been tabled now. It's publicly accessible for anyone that wishes to access it. I believe we'd normally put those online as well. We've got some interjection from the gallery. So we'll allow the next speaker up in a second. And Michelle, thank you very much for your time. We'll go to the next speaker, which is Ben Banasic speaking on the HAEMS unreleased study and the TAP and the fast track process. In the interest of fairness, what we might do is we'll take a 3-minute recess to allow them to quickly see the document, and then we will resume at 6:58. We'll resume. So our next speaking person, Ben Banasic, speaking on the HAEMS study, the TAP and the fast track process. Ben.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. All right. Hi, everyone. I speak on behalf of myself as a former mayor, East Ward councillor, a Thelma resident, and today I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer, Judy Hannon MP. It would have been nice to be sitting at Wilton today, but unfortunately it seems council has again forgotten East Ward and forgotten to book its own hall. The Hazard Analysis and Emergency Management Study, or HAEMS, identifies the exit times and emergencies for villages in 2016 with the approved projected growth. This matters because the lives of residents in Wollondilly should be the primary concern of all councillors around this table. In the previous term, councillors and the previous planning director were aware of a report that was created by Molyneux Stewart that estimated the village exit time would go from 1 hour in Appin's 2016 population to a shocking 8.1 hours, and that requires double the exit lanes. The report was delegated to the oversight of the then planning director. Later through the TAP and the fast track process, a single representative was nominated by this council. Under the authority of the mayor at the time, council chose and continued to defer responsibility and representation of that committee to the same planning director. Nominated by the CEO and accepting advice that the proceeding of the panel should be confidential, this withheld information. It enabled the process to progress without the chance to raise concerns of the proposals that we're now stuck with in the Shire. Thanks to the staff for the confirmation just then of the very late notification of sending the HAEMS to the TAP. However, sending something through post the decision in December 2022 just doesn't cut it. The information and the chance that your fellow councillors had has been removed. You removed their fighting chance. The decision not to act, to allow the staff representative to hold information and defer without question, remove the expertise and fighting chance of every other councillor around this table. And you chose not to disclose that information in the meetings. The TAP documents do not preclude councillors from information. Rather, it shows council as a body has a right to that information to assess those proposals. This should be information, that information should be available to the councillors should the mayor direct the CEO. We are now stuck with the approved developments with no detailed plans for infrastructure, no mechanism to fund them, stuck because of the ineffectual leadership of this council, because of the laziness of the former Liberal member for Wollondilly and his boss, the Liberal Planning Minister, Anthony Roberts. It is shocking when your local competition, the sacked council of Wingecarribee, did a better job. They stopped development in their shire.
Point of order, please. Sorry, with all respect, yeah. I just want to get some clarification around the accusation that another LGA is competition. I don't understand what you mean that we're in competition with another LGA. Could you give me some clarity around that, please? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, sorry.
Oh, well, I just want to know. I mean, you've said it, so I'm only asking.
Councillor Briggs, that wouldn't be a point of order, although I would ask the speaker just to be mindful of the way that they're asking the question. But
This has passed through your
I
government sector.
I can't sustain that as a point of order, as I don't think it is actually breaching anything in the community guidelines.
You have to try and
sorry.
something else, councillor.
Sorry, Ben, it's all yours.
It's okay. Look, so I'll just start that again if I can. I trusted the, it's shocking when your local competition, the sacked council of Wingecarribee, did a better job stopping development in their shire because they insisted of knowing the information and the process. Why? Because their general manager was strong enough to inform the councillors of that information. Further, it is an embarrassment and it's unprofessional that the Wollondilly Express article is the first time some councillors around this table have heard of the matter, which to date I haven't seen being refuted by the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor, aside from the comments tonight. I trusted the Deputy Mayor. I endorsed you, and I endorsed you when you promised to remain independent and to take no developer contributions. I trusted the Mayor, who I encouraged to run for council, and I spoke to often regarding your concerns of development in the Shire due to the fire exit times of when the election was on. When I discussed this with both of you, there was devastating fires locally, thankfully saving Yandera due to a well-timed burn from the RFS. And we knew the exit times in the villages were concerned then. I believe that we deserve to know what has changed since 2016. On that basis, can the following questions be addressed? What has the Mayor and Deputy Mayor personally done in relation to raising concerns with future growth about potential exit times of the villages in the case of an emergency? If this was a concern, why is the HAEMS remaining unreleased up until this point and unfunded as of today in the 2023-24 delivery plan? Is the department correct in saying that they had no submission or discussing regarding the exit times of the HAEMS raised by council? And I note the document that was circulated is post-dated the decision-making process. Will the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor commit today publicly to report and share to ICAC and publicly your dealings on all discussions that you both had with each other, the CEO, the former member for Wollondilly, Nathaniel Smith, on the Hazard Analysis and Emergency Management Study, or HAEMS, MacArthur 2040, the Gilead development, advice on the decision to not have the TAP and fast track information shared to councillors, decision to delegate the process to the planning director, the minutes of the TAP meetings that were recorded and shared to the planning director, and any discussions about these with the Planning Minister, Anthony Roberts, both with directly and through the member for Wollondilly, Nathaniel Smith. In doing so, if you did none of these, both of you, we also commit to report that you neither had any interest on the matter, because I believe that we're measured not only about what we do, but the potential of what we can all provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Given that portions of that question were directed to both me and the Deputy, what I'll do under Clause 8 of the Community Forum Guidelines is allow each of us to respond to those sections. But before I do that, I'll go to the Acting CEO and ask if you could address the relevant concerns that Mr. Banasic raised.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cooper, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. CEO and Mr. Mayor. So in response to, I guess, probably the critical thing I can provide input here in terms of why the HAEMS remains unreleased at this particular point in time. So in answering that question, I guess the input from agencies, the public agencies, is critical to ensure we have a robust set of studies to ensure that the agencies are comfortable with the actions, mitigation measures and recommendations, and that the content of the HAEMS does not identify any confidential security issues for those agencies. To date, we have received only one submission from the Department of Planning, even though we've engaged with multiple agencies in December 2022 and followed up on 2 occasions in this year as well. So follow up after the initial consultation with those agencies. Once we get that feedback from agencies back, it's intended to report the findings of the studies and the staff recommendations to council for their consideration. So I wish to reiterate that notwithstanding the HAEMS, we've consistently flagged, as I previously identified in response to the earlier question, and raised bushfire and evacuation along with all relevant planning issues throughout the TAP process and as that moved into the state rezoning process as well. So as previously identified, extracts and complete copies of the HAEMS have been provided to the department for its consideration in the context of the TAP, but also in the context of finalising the rezoning for the Appin Park precinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll address a few of the issues raised. Firstly, I guess I would highlight that during the TAP process, I wasn't actually the mayor. That would have been my predecessor, former Councillor Khan, and the deputy at the time would have been Councillor Banasic. But that notwithstanding, I certainly agree, Mr. Banasic, with the concerns you've raised and how big an issue it is, and that we need to be doing everything we can. It's something that I'm very passionate about. We have raised this very consistently, and in fact, the very first resolution that I put up as a mayoral minute was around this issue and our position on growth in Appin and addressing these things. It also in that time highlighted the frustration of this council, and certainly the frustration is heard from you around that TAP process. The fact is that council was not able to be involved. It wasn't a case of we delegated anything. It was a state-led process, and it was very clearly made so that councillors could not be involved. I have not seen anything that came out of that TAP process other than the public report that was released publicly. Everything there, our staff were involved, were required to sign non-disclosure agreements in order to take part in that process. And neither myself nor any other councillor has seen the results of that other than what has been publicly released. We moved several motions in regards to our concerns there, but I would highlight that it was the first resolution of 2022 where we noted that staff had been required to sign non-disclosure agreements around the TAP process, and that it was an untenable position, staff being unable to fully provide information to the governing body that they need to fulfil their duties under the Local Government Act 1993. Further to that, we wrote to the minister, which we did. The issue was raised on multiple occasions with the minister and with our then state MP. It's something to this day I find incredibly frustrating because we should have been involved in that process. To the issue, I guess, of the release of the HAEMS, I also agree strongly that needs to be released. I, like other councillors, have not actually read the thing yet because it remains confidential and councillors haven't seen a full copy. As the director pointed out, we are essentially just waiting for some feedback from the departments, but I'm very keen to have that released as soon as possible because it is a very important document. Notwithstanding the tabled document that we did provide that information in December as well as several times prior. Yes, I agree with your contention that it was slightly after the close date, but because it wasn't the public process and we had been engaging with the department, my understanding is that they had been expecting us to provide it, and they had it certainly within time to consider it, and they had been given the earlier versions of it before then as well. So it's not like that was the only time that that was provided. Specifically to your questions of what I have done raising concerns with future growth about potential exit times of villages, it's something that I'm very passionate about. It has been raised countless times with our previous MP. We have done multiple mayoral minutes. We have done countless amounts of media. We have raised this issue consistently. I'm incredibly frustrated in how much the department has chosen to lock us out of that process, but it is something that we have very, very much been fighting for, and it's something that, given my background, I care passionately about. I am concerned that the HAEMS is unreleased. Hopefully, as soon as we can get the feedback from the state agencies, we're able to make it public. And certainly that's something I'll be calling for next week in the mayoral minute, because this information should be public and it needs to be transparent. I'm not entirely sure what you're suggesting needs to be reported to ICAC, but I would point out that if you feel that there's something that needs to be reported to ICAC, that would be the appropriate mechanism to do so. And notwithstanding the fact that, as I said, I wasn't the mayor at the time and that I raised the concerns around the TAP process in the first mayoral minute that I had, to address some of the specific questions that you've asked. I have had several discussions with the CEO around the HAEMS. We raised it with the previous member on several occasions. I've raised it with the member for Campbelltown since Appin fell under his electorate. MacArthur 2040, on the HAEMS, councillors have been briefed multiple times, have been given information. Beyond that, I really haven't had much additional access to anything that councillors don't have access to. The information has been provided to councillors as a whole. MacArthur 2040 is something that we have spoken about regularly, both at councillor briefings, and it is obviously a key strategic issue for us. So it's something that we have stayed across. To the best of my recollection, I have never had any dealings with the Gilead development, given that it is outside the Shire, beyond some broad advocacy around some of the koala issues. As I said, there was no decision to have the TAP and fast track information kept from anybody. That was something that the department determined, and something that I find incredibly insulting and frustrating, and we should have been involved, and we haven't been. I had no involvement in the delegation to process the planning director to be the one that did that. That was essentially an operational matter, given that councils had to be taken out of the process and couldn't be involved. I have never seen any of the meetings of the TAP that were recorded and shared to the planning director, nor, to the best of my knowledge, have any other councillor, because we were kept out of the process. I would love to see those things, but I haven't seen them, and no other councillor has. And as I said before, I've raised the issues with the planning minister and the former member for Wollondilly. With the case of the former member for Wollondilly, we spoke about it several times. I believe we wrote to them a couple of times. We certainly wrote to Planning Minister Anthony Roberts, and I believe I raised it with him in a meeting that I had. Subsequently, we've also raised these concerns with the member for Campbelltown around the process. We need to get this right. This is incredibly important. I thank you for raising the issue, but it is something that council have been doing everything we can to stay across. It's just incredibly frustrating. I guess the final thing I would note with the comparison to Wingecarribee, they weren't part of the TAP process. The TAP process was specifically for Wollondilly. We were the guinea pig of the entire process. There was the later thing they did with the rezonings, which use a similar model to the TAP process, but that was not part of that. And given that Wingecarribee don't fall within the Sydney planning region, the issues that would come out of that are completely different. So I would contend that that's not a particularly fair comparison. Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll try and keep this brief because I don't want to necessarily dwell on the stuff that you've already raised. But firstly, I do want to thank the Speaker and also acknowledge that the residents of Wollondilly and their lives and how we conduct emergency management is our top priority here at Council. And as the previous mayor that was there during the Green Wattle Creek fires, I did see firsthand what it means when when emergency management is done well, and particularly when our local road network fails and the provision of infrastructure is so critical, particularly around the Picton bypass. And we have continued collectively as a council to continue to fight for the Picton bypass. So I just also wanted to acknowledge the answers given by the Director of Shire Futures and also the Mayor on the issue, particularly around the provision of the documents to the Department of Planning. But I do want to touch on and note the inference from the Speaker questioning my integrity and possible wrongdoing. And for the record, I'd like to like it noted that I have never received developer contributions and continue to remain an independent councillor. I'd also strongly suggest that should the Speaker or anyone else believe that there is any wrongdoing as part of done on behalf of their civic duty, that they provide any evidence directly to ICAC or the relevant authority. In relation to question 1, as outlined by the Mayor, a mayoral minute was passed as soon as possible in February 22, outlining key actions. And I've continued, and so has the Mayor and the rest of Council, continued to advocate strongly on the issue. In relation to question 4 and 5 consecutively, I would suggest that given that I wasn't the Deputy Mayor at the relevant time of that particular process, that the Speaker may like to speak to the previous Mayor, Robert Khan, and the previous Deputy Mayor, Councillor Banasic, who will be able to assist in answering questions 4 and 5, but notwithstanding, the Mayor has outlined the current Mayor and Deputy Mayor's actions from January 22 onwards.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. I would just clarify, because I know it was a contention, if we could, Madam Acting CEO, can we just get advice from the staff on the TAP process and whether what that looked like and whether councillors were able to be involved or not?
I might take that on notice, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.